Well, the plan was I was going to do a video about this clock, and I still will, but I thought it was important that I do something else instead. So let's set you guys over here. And hopefully I can get it lined up. The joys of progressive lenses. Anyway, welcome everyone. I was going to do a video of that clock, but I thought it was time. It's actually should have done it sooner, but it's time to do a video, and slideshow of Charlie, because I figured it was time that I get that done. So this part of it's going to be the sort of story about Charlie and how I got him and our time together and so forth. So, it was 14 years ago, and I had done a photo shoot for a friend of mine who and her kids were getting married. And I later on heard that they were going to get a golden retriever, and I don't know what possessed me. I just said, if anything happens, let me know. I could probably help. And for no rhyme or reason, I just said that. Anyway, sure enough, a few weeks later, I get a phone call saying, hey, they're moving. They can't keep the dog because the place that they're moving to doesn't accept, over a certain size. I thought, all right, well, I could probably help. I was volunteering for a rescue group at the time, and I had seen a group that did golden retriever rescues. I thought, well, I'll probably pick them up and talk to them and see what I can do to get them adopted. So anyway, drove out there, and it was in Modesto. And of course, when I went there, he was at their house, the house that they couldn't keep him at. So they had to, keep him tied up to the handrail. So the first thing that happened was he saw me and he's trying to climb in my lap. All right, so, and he seemed to be a really good dog. So I went inside, talked with the family for a while and visited and so forth. And so I said, okay, we got to get this guy home. So stuck him in the car, and he did really well. He, from Modesto back to Livermore. And at that time, I had two other dogs. I had a Lab Hound mix, and that was Chester. And I also had a Rottweiler, at least we think he was, and his name was Bear. So anyhow, finally get home, brought him into the house, and of course Chester's thinking, oh, no, we're not having this. And of course, give us some time, and they finally turned out to be really good together. They played all the time. So I thought, okay, good. So at least got that out of the way. And the Rottweiler, he was deaf and blind, so he didn't really care. He accepted Charlie without any problems. So anyway, time goes on, and it's okay, I knew by this time I'm going to keep Charlie, because now he's attached to Chester, and he always is looking to see where am I. So time goes on, I keep Charlie, and eventually I don't know how long it was between the time I picked him up and he was here. I found out that one of the dogs had cancer and the other one had a brain mass. So, double whammy. I had Chester, who had the brain mass, and it couldn't be operated on because it was on the back part of his skull, and it was kind of surrounding his spine. And they said if they go after it, which they could, but there's a chance they won't get it all. And if they didn't get it all, it was going to be a problem because it could come back faster than when it was already happening. So, and of course, the operation was crazy expensive. So we decided that we'll just go ahead and do the best we can for him. Meanwhile, Bear had a lump on his leg, and my doctor said we need to remove that, and he was really concerned about it. I'm like, okay, and he said, let's send it off to Davis and have it tested. And I'm like, all right. So we did that, and it turned out to where, yes, it came back positive for cancer, and I'm like, oh, really? So we're kind of settling into this. Meanwhile, they put Chester on prednisone to help with his problems he was having with that brain mass, and Bear was, just Bear. So I thought, well, I'll see what I can find out, with the guys. And Chester, I just let him, did the best we could with the prednisone. Bear, we took him to, I took him to Pleasanton. There was a place in Pleasanton. They were going to try and do some work on his leg, and maybe it would help, with the cancer. Unfortunately, when the lump was removed, the cancer just went crazy and it spread like wildfire. So anyway, he was the first dog that I had to put down. And, it's like, wow. So now I have Chester, and Chester's starting to show signs of he's not doing so well. So I don't remember how long it was, other than it was approximately about a month apart that finally Chester got to the point where he couldn't function, and I had to let him go. Now I have Charlie. So Charlie doesn't know what's going on. He knows that there's two dogs over here, and within a month apart of each other, they're both gone. So I risked taking him to work, and luckily enough, because I would never have done that if I didn't think he would have not behaved. But so anyway, it worked out fine. He was able to go to work. Well, I took him to work, and he got along with everybody. Loved the whole thing. Always was anxious when I was like, okay, let's go. And he literally would walk to the car, wait by the door. I open it up, and he'd get in. So he did that for a while. And one day we were doing a show, and we were in the middle of, I think it was during intermission, and I came out the lobby with Charlie, and he's doing his usual charming, and so he was hanging out there, and there was one person who I knew. It was the wife of a husband who was a teacher at the amateur high school. And so I'm standing there, and he walks up to her, and he nudges her hand, and I went, that's interesting. So she pet him, and he was, like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I had this idea about, okay, let's see about possibly therapy, being a therapy dog. So I did a web search, and the one that came up was it was Therapy Dog Inc. at the time. And so, anyhow, filled out the paperwork, and of course they sent some stuff back saying, yeah, we have somebody in Tracy that could do an evaluation on him. So this is, like, okay. So I drove out the first evaluation. I drove. Where did we go? Oh, we went to Home Depot. It was Home Depot and Tracy. And of course they did this little test, and he passed. Then we walked inside, and of course, he made sure he said hi to everybody, would say hi to him, and so that was easy. And then the second one was, of course, in Tracy, at assisted living, I think, and they had some folks there, and one of them, the folks that was there that was not bedridden, but she was in her room at the time, and they weren't sure how it was going to work out, but he found a way to wiggle himself around some trays and whatnot, or carts, not trays, and he was able to get over to her, and she was able to pet him, and they were very impressed with that. So I went, oh, good. So far so good. We're doing really fine. And when we got done with that evaluation, the lady said, "Wow," she said, if we could pass him on too, they would, he would have already passed." And I'm like, "Really?" So okay, and I'm thinking, well, this is going better than I thought. So evaluation number 3 comes along, and of course it's in Tracy, and it was at another assisted living facility, and I didn't know that it was on a certain date. So anyway, they called me and said, "Hey, are you going to be able to come out?" And I'm like, "Oh, sure." So I threw Charlie in the car, drove out to Tracy, and of course I got there as quickly as I could. And I walk inside, and of course I'm thinking, "Phew, I got here, everything's going fine." Charlie goes running inside the building. Well, not by himself. He has to be on a leash. But anyway, we went inside, and then the first thing he did was put his paws up on the counter, and went, "Oh my God, he just failed." Well, luckily, the lady said, "Oh, how cute." I'm like, "Ha." So anyhow, he passed. So that he only passed with 3 evaluations. They said they would have only passed him with 2. But and I'm sitting there thinking, there's actually, I'm pretty sure if you look on Facebook, there's pictures of that. So anyhow, that's how the whole therapy dog with Charlie thing came around, with him being a therapy dog. And so yeah, he passed with 3. He would have passed with 2 if they could have done it, but they said no, has to be at least 3. And I said okay. So I think we had to do it another time after that because my membership lapsed and I wasn't able to get it renewed in time. Same thing, it was easy. Because I remember the lady making a comment, says, "Yeah, he's a great dog. He'll be fine." So he got re-registered. Anyway, so I don't remember exactly when the first time he was registered as a therapy dog because it was not what they sent me on a little plaque that they had going to ring. That's the clock I'm going to do next. What time is it? Really? So this clock will ring every hour, or every 15 minutes it'll ring the hour of what it is. I'll explain it later. Anyhow, so we got through the evaluations. I had to do it again, and of course he passed. And so his original start of therapy work was longer than 6 years. But that being good, and then the reason why I think there was a loss of information is that the company had to change its name. It went from Therapy Dog Inc. to Alliance of a Therapy Dog, and I don't know what the story is behind that. I just know they had to change their name. So anyhow, they sent me the little paperwork, and of course I'll put that in a slideshow. Now we're in the mix of doing therapy stuff, and Charlie's always with me pretty much as I can. Endless amounts of shows. He loved doing the Pleasanton Police Department's DARE culminations because it involved kids, and there's several videos. There's several photos I will put in there that I wasn't able to do at the time because the Alliance of a Therapy Dog is really strict about putting your dog in there with certain folks. Lucky enough there's no kids involved, so it'll be just him. Not many of them because I didn't take any pictures when he was doing this stuff. So yeah, he did that for quite a while, and he loved it, especially when there was kids. He loved kids, and I don't know where the picture went, but there was the first time we did this, the DARE officer said, "Well, okay, just come out on stage and we'll introduce Charlie, and he'll invite some of the kids up." Little did we know that a lot of kids were going to come up and see Charlie. So I wish I knew what happened to it, because there's a picture of the stage and all these kids, and then me with this leash in my hand like this, and of course, buried amongst the kids is Charlie. You can't see him. But so he did great with all that stuff. And of course, he was around everywhere I could take him, and I'd go. And he'd go, of course, to Virginia City, where I would go up and with some friends, and he hang out at the. My favorite thing was to watch him because he was so, by that time, was, pretty much we'll just say mellow. He'd walk in and say hi to everybody, whoever was in there, and this was without a leash. And he would, do that, and then he would just sort of plop himself by the front door. And the reason for that is because it had a nice breeze, and he liked it. So, and then if I wasn't able to stay at the station, I could. There was a cable, and I would put the clip on there, so he could walk back and forth, and then he would greet people. I had one of the kids that was there ask me if that was my dog, and I said, "Yeah, that's my dog." And he goes, "Wow, what a great dog!" He said he spent most of his time there petting Charlie, and I was like, "Yep, that's Charlie." So anyhow, that's the story, and that's literally a Reader's Digest version of when I picked him up, what he did, and and for those of you who knew him, his personality. So what nobody knows about much, because I didn't really post a lot of stuff, but I'll tell you the story. So I don't remember exactly when it happened, but one day I was scratching his neck and I felt a lump under his chin. I'm like, oh, this can't be good. Took him to the vet, and they said, yeah, we need to do. They stick a needle in there and they draw what they can. And all I could think about was, it's going to be cancer, it's going to be cancer. Anyway, long story short is it came back inconclusive. They didn't know for sure if it was or wasn't. I'm like, well. And of course the vet wanted to do several tests at the cost of about $4,000. And I'm like, oh my God. If I spend that money on that dog for that just to find out if he does or doesn't have cancer, I can't go any farther. So it was a losing battle either way. So anyway, I kind of put it off, and we monitored the swelling, and it went down to the point where I couldn't find it one day. And I was at the vet, and I said, hey, I can't find this lump. And they went back and they said, sure enough, it's shrinking. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we may be out of the woods. So anyway, things are going fine, and he's, Charlie still. And then finally, one day he was really lethargic. I was like, okay, we got to go to emergency. So we took him in to Dublin. Excuse me. And we, they did blood work and some other stuff, and they didn't find anything. So like, okay. And then of course the next day he seemed to be a little bit better, and he was eating and drinking. And I thought, oh, thank goodness, everything's going to be fine for another, how long? Well, hopefully, he was 14, of course, and I was hoping for 16. So anyway, but it was short-lived. The following day, not too good. And I think we took him in on a Saturday, and I took him again to another emergency on Monday. And how that worked out is I went to my vet and said, this is how he's acting. They said, and their eyes got really big, and they said, take him to San Ramon. So we did. And they did a battery test. I mean, blood work, ultrasounds, you name it, they did it. And they couldn't find anything. The only thing they noticed was his thyroid was low, or the measurements on that was low. So they said they're going to try and put him on the thyroid medication. And they said if he comes back up and everything's fine, it's thyroid. And boy, I was hoping that's what the case was going to happen. So got the medication. Took a little while to get it because it was a little tricky, but got it. Unfortunately, didn't see a great deal of change. So now they're talking about, they did notice the lymph node that was swollen, and even before we left, the second emergency facility, they said that it could be affecting his neurological system. Okay, so if that's the case, then of course, then Chester came through my mind. And I thought, well, maybe they can put him on, prednisone and see what if that'll bring him back around. And anyway, the vet agreed, and so they gave me some medication for it. And by this time, now we're running into the serious problems. We're getting into he's not eating very much. We had to push the pills down his throat. He was still drinking, going outside and doing his business outside. I thought, well, there's still hope. And he wasn't doing much. It was tricky getting food into him, so we had to use a syringe to do it. So we're going along, and of course, he's still deteriorating. So anyway, I won't go into the details of how that went out, but long story short, he stopped eating, finally ended where he couldn't drink, was having accidents in random places, and that was the sign that said, "Yeah, I think we've lost this battle." And so on April 5th, I had to make that decision, and that's when we put him to sleep. Luckily, I mean, not that there's anything that was luckily, but I felt somewhat. I don't know what the word is. I didn't feel horrible about my decision because Charlie wasn't responding to much anything other than the fact that when he had to go to the bathroom, he would, perk up. But that was it. Other than that, he was pretty much out the entire day of on the 5th. So anyhow, we got him to the vet, and they we had to go through the whole procedure. And so long story short is that he never really came around. So it made it a little less stressful for me. Wasn't easy, but anyhow. So I know this is a lengthy part of getting to the slideshow with Charlie, but I wanted to explain to folks, kind of what happened, how I got him, our life together, and we were glued at the hips. So, I just wanted to show the slideshow for him. Unfortunately, all the slides are not in order because, I've had him for 14 years, and some of the stuff I had got lost in the, with media the way it is now. Everything's digital, so that's one thing I don't like about digital, because you can easily lose stuff, and I've lost stuff. Some of it was my fault because I'm terrible when it comes to, organizing slides and whatnot. But I want to do the slideshow, and then I also want to thank everybody on social media that made comments and all that stuff. Because it's really kind of funny about that is I wasn't going to really make a big deal of it. And then when I finally decided to go ahead and put that he passed on social media, I was pretty surprised. So, anyhow, sorry, I was trying to avoid that. Without further ado, because I don't think I can talk much longer, here's the slideshow. And again, thanks everybody for all the comments on social media about Charlie when I put him up there. So I'm going to stop. Thanks.